Good morning. Welcome to today's administrative meeting of the Maryland Public Service Commission. We'll call this meeting to order. A lot of friendly faces in the crowd today. One friendly face that I'm looking for is Toya Lee. Where's Toya? Oh, right, front row center. Easy to spot. Toya has just joined the PSC last week in the Executive Secretary's office as one of our newest administrative officers. She has a wealth of experience coming from the Social Security Administration, the Maryland Motor Vehicles Administration, and she has 15 years of experience with Verizon. So we are very happy to have her and her expertise working in the Terry Romine shop, and we welcome you to the Commission. Thank you, Toya. Thanks. With that, why don't we jump into our docket for today. Madam Secretary, before we hit that, we have some minutes to approve for the January 16th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes from the January 16, 2019 administrative meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. At this time, let's move to the consent agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On the consent agenda, there are 4 items. The first item is Sunsea Energy, LLC, filed on October 9, 2018, an application for a license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland. Item 2 is Resource Energy Solutions, LLC, filed on October 15, 2018, an application for a license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland. Third item is CNA Surety, filed on December 19, 2018, request to cancel bond. And item number 4 is SureTech Insurance Company, filed on December 26, 2018, notification of surety bond cancellation.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions on any of the items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 1, I'd move that we grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland for all customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application. For item number 2, I'd move that we also grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker services and aggregator services, for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. That we direct the company to provide marketing and training materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff 30 days prior to utilization of the materials in Maryland, and that we direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application. And for items number 3 and 4, I move that we note the filings.
Thank you. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
The 4 motions are approved. Madam Secretary, the administrative agenda.
The first item on the administrative agenda is Potomac Electric Power Company, filed on December 11, 2018, additional tax savings related to TCJA, case numbers 9472 and 9473.
Thank you. And if counsel for the utilities are present, please step forward when your item is called. Mr. Spivak.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is a filing by the Potomac Electric Power Company proposing to flow additional tax savings applicable to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act to refund it through the BSA mechanism. PEPCO made this filing on December 11, 2018, announcing its intent to distribute additional tax savings of $862,000 to customers through the BSA mechanism. The filing stems from the passage of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act in late 2017 and the Commission order to the various utilities to refund excess collected taxes to ratepayers, in PEPCO's case as the result of a settlement of its last rate case. PEPCO is ordered to distribute a one-time refund of $9.7 million to customers relative to the regulatory liability period of January 1st, 2018 through May 31st, 2018, and to notify the Commission if it discovered additional money was due to ratepayers. The additional tax savings in question now are a true-up of PEPCO's prior regulatory liability. The company's BSA mechanism is also a true-up mechanism, which along with the relatively modest amount is why staff agrees that it is the appropriate means to distribute the refunds to those classes that have a BSA. OPC has filed a letter disputing the calculation of the amount, but after reviewing the issue, staff believes the company calculated it correctly. Staff recommends that the Commission authorize Pepco to flow the additional tax savings to customers through the BSA mechanism or provide one-time refunds, and direct that if additional tax savings are identified that were not addressed in the previous filings in this matter related to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, that Pepco is required to make a filing with the Commission to return those savings to consumers as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Counsel for the People's Council.
Good morning, Anna Ryan for the Office of People's Counsel. OPC has reviewed Pepco's response to our objection, and we believe that their explanation is correct. So OPC would like to withdraw our objection and support the filing as proposed.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Mr. Michael, anything to add? That makes it easy.
No.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions?
I just have one. Is there going to be any kind of a notification on the bill that there is this credit and where it's from, why it's there?
Sure. So we talked with Montgomery County. They wanted a notification. And so, like with other refunds on the BSA classes for the notification, we'll put it on our BSA filing and we'll put it on our website that it's there. For the classes that are not covered by the BSA, the OL, TR, MT, SL, SSL, and TN, we're going, and that's not a big customer class, we're going to send them a postcard explaining that they'll be seeing a credit on their bill and what the credit is for, the TCJA.
Okay, great. I think it's good for transparency and just to show the
Yes.
utilities and the commission are on the ball. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move we grant Pepco the authority to flow the additional tax savings to customers through its BSA mechanism and to provide one-time refunds as applicable. We direct that if additional tax savings are identified that were not addressed in previous filings in this matter related to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, that Pepco is required to make a filing with the Commission to return those savings to customers as soon as possible.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? The motion is approved.
Item number 6 is Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, filed on December 18, 2018. Supplement 618 to PSC Maryland E6. The company proposes to revise time of use standard offer service energy rates and February 2019 administrative charges under Rider 1 standard offer service.
Thank you. This is BGE's retail electric service tariff to update the administrative charge, time of use residential and type 1 standard offer service rates, and schedule EV transmission rates to become effective February 1st, 2019. With regard to BGE's administrative charge order number 87891 requires that the company collect the actual cost of the incremental cost and uncollectible components of the administrative charge subject to a true-up. Thus, the new administrative charge rates are true-ups of actual cost versus forecasted cost for incremental, uncollectible, and cash working capital costs of providing standard offer service. The specific rates are set forth in the tariff and staff's comments. BG is updating its EV transmission rate for the June 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2019, but not other transmission rates. BG has done the same in the previous two January SOS filings and will update the rate again in April and May with all the other transmission rates before they become effective June 1st. The EV transmission rate is anticipated to decrease from 4.410 cents to 3.244 cents per kilowatt hour. Staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing BGE's revisions to its administrative charge and tariff pages with an effective date of February 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Counsel for Baltimore Gas.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bev Skora on behalf of BGE. I have no additional comments, but I'm here if you have questions.
Thank you. Do commissioners have questions of counsel?
Just a comment, or correct me if I'm wrong, but these filings represent a decrease for all classes affected by the filing. Decrease in rates, about $100 for $98 for residential customers.
I didn't do the math, but that's probably
I
about
think
correct.
that's what the buck sheet says, so we'll just
Okay.
accept
Yeah.
that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of February 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. This is a big filing next. Madam Secretary.
Item number 7 is Washington Gas Light Company, filed on November 1st, 2018. It's 2019 current factor and project list, case number 9335. On January 15, 2019, it also made a filing of revised tariff pages on mail log 223622. At today's meeting, the Commission will only consider page 101. Consideration of page 102, and that filing has been deferred to a future admin meeting.
Thank you. Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Annette Garofalo on behalf of Commission staff. Before I begin, I would like to, there is a typographical error on page 9, line 11. The word deletion should be deleted, and in its place should go the word addition.
Thank you. Ms. Garofalo, where on page 9?
Line 11,
Line
which
11.
it is the first, I believe it's the first full paragraph. Let's see. Yes, it's on page 11, I have a full paragraph. It begins accounting division. And if you go to line 11, midway through that line is the word deletion, and that word should be addition.
Thank you. Please proceed.
By order number 88943, the Commission did approve a Washington Gas Light Company's Stride 2 plan effective January 1, 2019, subject to certain conditions. As approved, WGL's Stride 2 contains 5 distribution programs and 5 transmission programs. These programs and their projects are described in staff's comments. In its order number 88943, the Commission noted that approval of WGL's proposed Stride 2 plan maintains the company's current acceleration rate, which constitutes completion of 120 miles of Stride infrastructure replacement over 5 years. By approving WGL's Stride 2 plan, the Commission authorized WGL's overall spend of $371,760,000 for the company's distribution programs and $21,630,000 for WGL's transmission programs over 5 years, adjusted for inflation at 3%. All reporting requirements remain in place. WGL originally filed on November 1, 2018, its 2019 project list. Subsequently, WGL filed on January 9, 2019, its revised 2019 current factor and project list. Both were revised after a December 27, 2018 filing. The difference between the December filing and the latest revised filing is that the latest filing includes carryover projects from 2018 in several distribution and transmission programs, and 6 new projects in distribution programs 1 through 4, resulting in a total of 101 projects for all programs and a monthly current factor. Staff has reviewed both lists and discussed the final list in detail in its comments. The total estimated cost of these projects is $64.6 million without contingency, which includes the cost of carryover projects added to the list from Stride 1 that were not moved into rate base in WGL's recent case number 9481, and the 6 new projects in distribution programs 1 through 4 that were not included in WGL's original 2019 project list. To this amount, WGL has added $7.8 million, which represents WGL's 2018 Stride 1 spend for October, November, and December 2018. Stride 1 is now closed, and these amounts have not been included in rate base and therefore remain in Stride. Staff has reviewed the revenue requirement calculations in WGL's calendar year 2019 Stride Factors Report, filed on January 9th, 2019, and believes they are accurate. In addition, since WGL's December 27, 2018 filing included a contingency factor, Staff has prepared a comparison chart to show what the STRIDE revenue requirement and the STRIDE residential surcharge would be less the contingency factor and less the 6 new projects included in the January 9th, 2019 filing. WGL's proposed surcharges are below the surcharge caps as determined by the STRIDE legislation, and as a result, the company's surcharges will be set equal to the surcharges as proposed, if you accept our recommendation. For residential customers, this is 48 cents per customer per month, and staff recommends that the Commission approve WGL's 2019 updated project list and proposed surcharges to be effective January 23rd, 2019.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo, and thanks to the team behind you. Mr. O'Loughlin.
Morning, Patrick O'Loughlin on behalf of OPC. Our comments that we filed were mostly in regards to this January 9th, 2019 filing from WGL, wherein following the removal of the contingency, their budget fell by about $7 million or so. And WGL then submitted their revised STRIDE with another $6.6 million in additional projects. We had a couple of concerns with that. First, there was no real compelling rationale for adding to its 2019 list. The removal of the contingency should have had no effect on the work initially planned, and the scope of the projects were the same, so there shouldn't have been any change in workforce plans. Second, their plan falls short of its own stated target of 19 miles of main replacement. The STRIDE main plan for 2019 totals just about 16.5 miles. And third, there was a failure to justify their expansion of Program 5C. In the revised filing, the number of lines increased from 125 to 155. Neither of these numbers ever included any contingency, and it's in justifying it, the company said, quote, upon receipt of order number 88943, the company reevaluated the distribution of the total spend and elected to complete additional units. We don't believe that that's a justification, a proper justification of this increase. In sum, WGL provided no justification for these additional projects other than that they wanted to hit their $65 million target spend. Beyond the budgetary concerns, that their plan doesn't meet their own target of 19 miles. OPC understands that WGL has discretion in its yearly spend and yearly scope. And for these reasons, OPC isn't recommending any revisions to the company's project list at this time, but for the reasons I just stated, the company's maneuver to keep its 2019 spend at its level before the removal of contingency is cause for concern. And therefore, OPC is requesting an instruction from the Commission to the company that the directive to remove the contingency from the projects in the prior order also apply to the annual budget amounts that were submitted with the company's STRIDE 2 plan. Removing that 12% contingency from the $393.6 million 5-year STRIDE 2 budget means that the 5-year budget without contingency would be approximately $346.4 million. And now that the company has put forward $64.6 million worth of projects for 2019, that there would be $281.4 million remaining for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Loughlin. Counsel for Washington Gas. Correct me if I'm wrong, you did not submit a written response to OPC's concerns?
That's correct.
Okay.
Good morning, John Dodge on behalf of Washington Gas. Not much to add. Happy to answer any questions. A couple of minor points. In concept, we agree with OPC that whatever the 5-year budget is, we recognize we're front-loading a little bit. We did have a capital budget set internally for 2019, and we would like to sustain that. The bottom line is we think we're giving more bang for the buck. We are doing more projects for the original $64 or $65 million than we originally anticipated, and we would like to sustain that replacement rate as well. One thing I'd like to point out in OPC's comments, if I indulge me for a moment, on page 7, the first line of the first full paragraph, the line reads, because the company has pledged to replace 120 miles. I am concerned about the use of the word pledged. It reminds me of the word promise that OPC used during our STRIDE 2 hearings and briefing. The company does not pledge or promise to do the work in its STRIDE plan. We hope to do that, we propose that, and we do our level best to complete the projects that the Commission has approved. But we do not believe we are subject to an enforceable pledge or promise. Again, we'll do our level best, but I want to make sure that we disagree with OPC's characterization of what we have put forward before the Commission. I think the Commission has before it an interesting question. You heard some overall budget numbers from STRIDE and a different number from OPC. Staff has interpreted your STRIDE 2 order to have approved $394 million for our STRIDE 2. There's another perspective you heard from OPC. It's 394 less whatever contingency amount the company and parties would calculate. We have taken the conservative approach, and we have backed out whatever the contingency amount is from the $394 million, and that's what we're considering our 5-year budget for STRIDE 2. We will be happily surprised and grateful if we have been too conservative in that approach, but I do think that's a clarification the Commission might consider making.
Thank you. Can you respond to Mr. McLaughlin's concerns with the expansion of Program 5C?
Certainly. We have not expanded any program. The programs have been approved by the Commission. We have added projects in Program 5C. The way it works conceptually, we have an Optimane and expert ranking of projects in each program. If we see field conditions or other issues that arise, we will dip down into the minor leagues, if you will, and pull up the next set of projects within a program. So we're not expanding the program, we're simply dipping into the next pool of projects that are lower risk rank, and we're bringing them up for more accelerated replacement. So there's absolutely no change to how we've handled our programs in the past. It's simply adding projects to an already approved program.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard.
Just for Mr. O'Loughlin, just if I can understand, so I mean, the STRIDE program is meant to accelerate these programs, to do these improvements, and so if I'm hearing you, you don't dispute that these are okay projects. It's just that you think that they should have been focused on the 19-mile pledge or promise or whatever. I'm just trying to understand if we found savings through the contingency side, why wouldn't we want to use then those savings to again advance accelerating this overall STRIDE program?
Yes, Commissioner. Yes, we don't dispute that these are STRIDE eligible projects. So that's not our contention that they're adding projects that don't qualify under STRIDE. Our concern is that the budget that was approved was the budget, and the Commission, in its opinion, removed the contingency. And for us, that means that the budget itself was then affected because every part of it included that contingency that was not necessary.
Okay, even though you've got the annual budget and then there's the overall STRIDE 2
That's correct.
budget. So we haven't exceeded I guess the 5-year budget, though.
Again, WGL does have its discretion to spend, on its projects. WGL is going to know better what they want to do within their budgets. But from what we're looking at, no, I don't think that's the issue. No.
Well, Mr. McLaughlin, was it not within the scope of WGL's authority to, once that 12% contingency was removed, to replace that with additional projects?
Well, that's the question that's before the Commission. Did the Commission actually approve a dollar amount, or did they approve the project list? Because if the project list was what was approved, then that amount changes because that contingency wasn't needed.
Hence your request for a direction.
Correct.
Thank you. Commissioners. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Dodge, why weren't the carryover projects included in the original submittal?
My understanding is most of them were on our deferred list for one reason or another, paving moratoriums or other reasons. So we went back and took a harder look at those after the Commission's order and determined that the time is ripe to bring those carry forward projects up to snuff.
I'm trying to figure that out. They were on a moratorium list, but now all of a sudden they're not, and they can go forward.
Well, some were deferred for other reasons, paving or for restoration issues. So we've gone back and cracked the whip, if you will, on contractors, and now we're able to complete those projects.
Why were the 6 projects not included in the original submittal for Stride 2? 6 new
Budgetary
projects.
reasons. We are already at our internal capital spend
So
amount.
it would be fair to characterize it that since we did not approve the 20% contingency, that you're just backfilling to get to a spend level.
That would be one perspective, Your Honor.
That's what it appears like to me.
And I appreciate that. We're taking advantage, as Commissioner Richards suggested, of a little opportunity to stick with we have the crew complements to do it, we have an internal approved budget, and we'd like to stick with both and be able to pick up those extra projects.
I mean, my perspective is we should be picking these projects based on their importance in improving the infrastructure strategically, and not on some desire to spend a certain amount of money. I think
Your
that's
Honor,
the wrong perspective.
If I may, 25 of the 31 new projects, the Commission has already approved. They were on the 2018 list. So there are only 6 truly incremental or additive projects.
I get it. I understand. I asked specifically about the 6 new projects.
And the 6 new projects are the most risk-laden, if you will, on our list. So we're going back, getting the projects that the Commission has already approved first, and then dipping down into the next tranche of projects for the 6 that takes us up to our capital spend.
How many of the new projects are replacing low-pressure systems?
Subject to check, 0.
This is a little hard for me to digest. I have to tell you that. It seems like we disallowed about $74 million with the contingency, and you're backfilling about $65 million in new projects because of that, just to reach some spend level. And that doesn't appear well to me.
Again, I'll repeat myself. Most of them are pre-approved projects. The 6 others are risk ranked to be next on the list to be replaced. If I may, on the low pressure issue, as we said during our Stride hearing, as we said during our rate case hearing, we look forward to the Commission's inquiry. We will be enthusiastic participants in that inquiry. If directed by the Commission, we will go forth and do acceleration of low pressure. But we are, without Commission authorization or consideration or even consultation with the other parties, we're going to stick with our Optimain risk rankings right now, and this is what it turned out.
Thank you.
Commissioner Herman.
Good morning, Mr. Dodge.
Good morning.
Mr. Dodge, I understood during our Stride proceedings that the company asserted that it was, after 5 years of Stride, that it was much better at predicting costs than it was when it first started. Is that correct?
We certainly hope so, Your Honor.
Right. And the contingency was contingency for factors such as weather or digging up the streets was more difficult or delays, that sort of thing. The contingency was for that. So, the idea that there are 6 more projects, the contingency was not removed in order to allow for more projects. It was removed to reduce the cost because the company had already, in part at least, because the company had already asserted that it was far better at estimating than it used to be. And so I'm a little confused, and the Commission approved a certain project level, and now you're saying, oh, we have people who can do even more. And, we've also seen concerns with contractors and having enough and that sort of thing. So I'm seeing 2 sides of a question that leave me, kind of trying to figure out where we are on this.
We agree completely. The contingency was not backed out in order to give us the backfill opportunity, and we don't see that that's what we're doing here. We're taking advantage of crew complements that we do have to do a limited amount of work that also has the benefit of sticking to our internal capital spend. That's as simple as I can make it. For your other question about, well, let me step back. The contingency is, overall, it's 12% on distribution, and for some transmission projects, it's 20%. So these are not broad-based contingencies that you can take $100 and say, we're going to subtract 12% of $100 to get to 88, I guess it would be. So we might quibble a little bit with OPC's numbers on our overall budget, but none of the projects that you have before you have contingency built in. We have improved our cost estimation. We will be bound by those, and if we are off in either direction, the statute has the reconciliation mechanism. If we overcollect, customers benefit because they get the money back or credit back, plus our carrying costs. If we overcollect, if we undercollect, we're on the hook and we don't get the carrying costs. So there's no hidden ball here. We're just trying to do more work for the same amount of money that we presented to the commission originally.
So that was a question. That was my next question. OPC had some numbers, and staff had some numbers in their buck sheet as well. And my recollection is it's not a straight. It wasn't a straight 20%. It was a 12% off of labor, I believe, something like that. So you have some questions with respect to People's Council's numbers. You said, what about with respect to the staff numbers that are in their buck sheet?
Well, my client may come up and kick me in the shins for saying this, but we have been, our informal calculation is that backing out the total contingency amount leaves us with a 5-year budget of $351 million. That's approximately what OPC, I think OPC came up with 346. I think their lower numbers because they did a blast of the 12% across everything, or 20% on transmission. Ours is a little more a finer calculation, if you will, going to specific project levels of backing out the contingency. But it's in the $350 million range. Staff's, as I understand it, staff's position is when the commission issued its Stride 2 order, it approved the $393.6 million, but we can't do any projects with contingencies under that budget. So when I said earlier the commission could take up that question, we would be happy if you sided with staff. Conservatively, we're estimating that we have $351 million to spend over 5 years.
Okay, so your budget then is based on that
Correct.
amount. Okay, thank you very much.
And I should add, we do agree, whatever the numbers are, and if we front load, if we spent $300 million in 2019, we would have the balance for the remaining 4 years, whatever the number is. So we do agree in concept with OPC's mathematical calculation.
Thank you.
Does staff have any response to either the utility or OPC's statements?
We do not, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Garofalo. OPC has presented a question here whether or not WGL presented a rationale for adding to its list. Obviously, we approved the Stride 2 plan last month, and there is an open question, it appears. Did we approve a project list? Did we approve a total budget? Did we approve both? At this time, I would feel comfortable to have an opportunity to review the pleadings in a little more depth, review our order in December, and take this matter under advisement to allow some additional time to review this case and the recommendations of staff and Mr. O'Loughlin. Do commissioners support a motion to table this?
Mr. Chairman, I support a motion to table it. I would ask Mr. Dodge, in order to begin a surcharge in February, by what date would you need an order?
If I may have a moment, Your Honor. Mr. Wagner has instructed me as soon as possible. Notice I led with Mr. Wagner saying that. If we could be on the next admin agenda for the 30th at the latest, that would be great. If the commission released something before that, we'd be even happier with you, of course.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
But just as a reminder, our billing cycle begins before February 1st. So that's the complication that we have to endure here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dodge.
Yeah, that presents somewhat of a challenge, but we're in the middle of a rate case, so just to let everybody know who does it.
I'll let Mr. Curran know you've got other responsibilities. So.
Thank you. The commission will take this matter under advisement, noting the time constraints, and we'll do our best to get a decision out or address this at a future administrative meeting. Thank you. Next item, Madam Secretary.
Item number 8 has been deferred to the February 6, 2019 meeting. So the last item on the agenda is item number 9, Clean Choice Energy Community LLC, filed on November 29, 2018, request for continuation of waiver.
If I might have just a minute, Your Honor. So, by this filing, Clean Choice is seeking to extend and conclude the waiver received from the Commission in June through December 19, 2018. That was June of 2017. In place of the waiver, Clean Choice seeks a day-for-day extension to be calculated from November 19, 2018, plus an additional waiver of approximately 4 months. By letter order dated June 13, 2018, the Commission directed BGE to extend applicant's operation deadline on a day-for-day basis beginning December, I'm sorry, that must be June 2017. Applicant's operation deadline, so the order directed BGE to extend applicant's operation deadline on a day-for-day basis beginning December 3rd, 2017 until the earlier of October 1, 2018, or 30 days after the end of the moratorium. Clean Choice was further instructed to file a status report regarding the moratorium by December 17, 2018. The status report, together with a proposed Anne Arundel County ordinance having an expiration date of November 1, 2018, was filed as directed on September 17th. Applicant's requested day-for-day extension would apply to 3 projects, each located in Anne Arundel County in the BGE service territory. Applicant requests that the Commission extend and conclude the waiver to and through November 19, 2018. And in response to questions from staff, which are attached to staff's comments, Clean Choice stated that the 3 projects have each spent 350 days under the moratorium and noted its request for a day-for-day extension through February 7, 2020 for the Bathian Solar Project and through February 17, 2020 for the Checker Spot Solar and Patuxent Solar Project. Applicant indicated to staff that it seeks a further adjusted operation deadline to account for winter weather construction through June 1, 2020. Under COMAR 20-620304, a community solar system has 12 months in which to begin operations, plus an additional 6 months which can be granted upon payment of a refundable deposit, resulting in a 548-day period. The tolling of this period due to a pending legal challenge is appropriate because it is difficult to predict the length of such a challenge. However, after the tolling is complete, a community solar system is left with the difference between the total allowed time and the elapsed time before and after the period in which time was tolled. Applicant correctly states that the moratorium consumed 350 days. However, those 350 days constitute the tolling period and have already been given to applicant. Bathian Solar has 445 days from November 19th remaining in which to begin operation of its system, or until February 7th, 2020, assuming arrangements have been made with BGE for the additional 6 months allowed under COMAR 20-620304C1. Checker Spot Solar and Patuxent Solar obtained conditional interconnection approval 1 week after Bathian Solar, and therefore each has a deadline of February 14th, 2020, provided arrangements have been made with BGE for the additional 6 months allowed under COMAR 20-620304C1. Staff is aware that applicant's loss of 350 days due to the county zoning issue was beyond its control. However, staff encourages applicant to complete these projects as soon as possible and prior to the onset of the winter heating season of 2019 to 2020, and recommends operation deadlines of no later than February 7 and February 14th, respectively, contingent upon Clean Choice's payment to Baltimore Gas and Electric Company of the amount required under Comar 20 620304C1 to retain each project's place in BGE's queue.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. A very comprehensive summary. Does Council for Clean Choice have anything to add?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. David Buglemans on behalf of Clean Choice Energy, partnership with One Energy Renewables. I have with me Marnie Carroll from One Energy. She's part of the development team, is doing the local permitting in Anne Arundel County for the 3 projects. As Mr. Garofalo summarized, we've revised our request for an additional extension until June 1st, 2020, and there's 2 reasons for that. First, after we made our most recent filing in this matter, after some back and forth with staff, we realized that the operational deadlines for both of these projects with a strict day-for-day extension would be in the middle of February 2020. Well, that provides some additional time. It makes these projects fall into the winter construction issue that some other projects have faced and have had waiver requests for the Commission to request some flexibility in regards to being able to begin operations accounting for winter variability. The second reason, and it's related to the first, is where these projects are with local permitting. As the Commission knows, Anne Arundel County imposed a moratorium in December 2017, just a few months after program acceptance. During that time, the projects really were unable to make any progress with local permitting, and once the moratorium was lifted, they began that process again. The issue is the county has made some initial determinations, including some that we actually learned today, waiting for our opportunity to present to you, that have suggested that the permitting timeline for the projects will take longer than anticipated, and Marnie's going to speak about that in a moment. So for those reasons, we tried to work with staff for some additional flexibility until June 1st, 2020. Our reasoning is that staff for previous projects have seemed to stick to June 1st to account for that winter construction issue and also the local permitting issue that Ms. Carroll will speak about in a moment. We think the Commission's recognized that, and we think it's a reasonable request for these 3 projects. With that, I'll hand the microphone over to Ms. Carroll. I know the Commission's had some questions about local permitting in the past, and Mr. Chasen and I have attempted to answer those questions, but we thought the Commission would like to hear directly from one of the developers.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll.
Good morning, Commissioners. Marnie Carroll. As described, I'm with One Energy Renewables and Clean Choice Energy. We are partners developing Checker Spot, Patuxent, and Bathian Solar, 3 2-megawatt community solar projects in Anne Arundel. Bottom line here, as a summary, we resubmitted after the moratorium as directed by the agency, received our first feedback December, 30 days later, December 10th, requesting a long list of changes that were quite surprising compared to the good faith effort we made prior to the moratorium to work with local agencies. So a big, the bottom line summary of their comments is one of the requests we made was to run concurrently 2 of the permitting steps. They denied that request, adding another 3 months to our discretionary permit calendar. I use the word discretionary because the financiers are ready to commit after that point. So what we're looking at here is another 10 months, conservatively, 10 to 12 months of permitting. In this county, the non-discretionary permits, building, grading, all of those take 6 months minimum. So in order to start construction before winter, we would need to have all permits in hand by around end of July, August, to start and get most of the construction done before it's too wet. When it's too wet, you have a larger environmental impact, the mud. We want to avoid that. So really, there is no way to meet the February 2020 deadline with these changes that have occurred in the way the county is viewing our permit process since our original filing. What we anticipate is, with a very conservative assumptions on these permitting steps, that we would get to the start of construction by March 4th, 2020, thus the June date being feasible but very tight. Happy to answer other questions.
So, Mr. Bilgemans or Ms. Carroll, March 4th is the target for when construction would actually begin on these projects?
So that's an estimated date. Just to go in a little deeper, and I'll try not to go too much. I know too much.
You created a timetable, and as of now, March 4th is when you said 10 to 12 months of permitting, and then
That's
you
right.
turn soil on March 4th. And
That's correct. I would just add that one of our projects was outright denied, and although we've met with them and asked what we can do to change the application, they've not been willing to explain why that one versus others are not able to reapply.
Which of the 3 projects was denied?
That's the Bathian project.
And no explanation was given?
There's an explanation, but there isn't a mitigation option for the issues they raise.
Mr. Bilgelman, so is it my understanding that you're making the request for the extension of time to June 2020 through your data request to Ms. Garofalo?
Correct, Your Honor. We thought that was the most efficient way to do it. We appreciate Mr. Garofalo raising that with you. We just didn't want to submit additional papers.
And have these projects paid the additional fee for the additional 6 months to keep their place in the queue?
My understanding is that they have not. I think our expectation would be essentially the what's that? Yeah, it would be paid, and it would essentially be a day-for-day extension applied to the deadline to pay the deposit. So it would be due in the future. Can't do the math in my head, but.
So instead of requesting an extension from this commission, why not pay the fee at that time and you get your additional 6 months, which would bring you through August, instead of requesting us an extension through June today?
So the dates that we've requested actually account for the full 18 months. So we factored in, the assumption would be that the projects would pay the deposit. But these dates that we've talked about are reflecting the 18-month development window, and then adjusted an additional 4 months to account for the February to June issue.
Okay,
That makes sense.
I did not take that from the filing. Okay, so it's the 18 months plus this additional time to get you through June.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Obviously June 2020 is still a ways off. I am concerned. Obviously the developer has the right to come back and request an extension based on what you actually encounter. The fact that there's an additional 10 to 12 months of permitting at this point is concerning. Obviously that's at the county level. It's outside of your control. But that is evidence that you would be free to bring back to the commission to provide us in justification of a longer extension. Do commissioners have questions? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Bugmans, you probably would be disappointed if I didn't ask you about your winter weather explanation, because we've had so many of these. Mm-hmm. How many days in the winter season do you estimate the developer will lose because of weather in Maryland?
That's a good question. I think actually Marnie is probably the most appropriate answer.
Yeah, so we're developing the Monarch Solar project in Prince George's County that did request an extension. We anticipated an October start and did not get our permits in time for that. That even would have been risky at that point, as we saw October was a lot rainier this year, and so it was the right, it would have been difficult anyway. So if you look at 4 months for construction, starting that in the late October to November is something financiers are not comfortable with, and again, has a larger impact to the environment to do it at that time.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was specifically asking, all the explanations up to this point is it gets too cold, ground gets frozen, can't drill, can't trench. Now you're expanding it to a rainy season window, which April's pretty rainy too.
We would construct in April. There's no issue with April.
Right, but I'm asking specifically about the winter weather excuse that or reason that we've continually got in these extension cases. And my question is, how many days of the winter season, December 21st to March 20th, do the developers expect to lose due to cold weather in the winter?
Not
Is
sure
that-
what the December 21st
So
to
that's
March
the first
20th.
day. That's the first day of winter, and March 20th is the first day of spring, or March 21st is the first day of spring.
So I don't do the construction, but I don't know of a project that's begun in December. So it's not just the first day of winter, but the risk of how wet and rainy it is for grading. So I'm hesitant to
I'm asking Mr. Bugelmans, who came to the microphone just a little bit ago and explained that due to the winter season, that construction delays would likely occur. How many days do you expect that to apply to on average? Just a guess. The 3 months? The whole 3 months? 2 weeks?
I think it's less a strict projection in terms of how many days delays would occur. Really, the issue is that the risk that it's the risk that delays would occur at all in terms of obtaining financing for the projects, and the fact that you need to complete construction with all this variability in order to stay in the program. Really, what this is about a perception of risk from the financing end, and the ability to even be able to begin construction at all. I think it's so. The reason why I think we're struggling is that, you can make certain projections, but it's more the perception of risk combined with the operational deadline, which would fall in the middle of winter. So I'm sorry that doesn't directly answer your question, but
I appreciate it. I appreciate the challenges that have been presented by local governments and their planning and zoning processes. We've seen it in multi-jurisdictions. It's in the press continuously, and this commission, or this commissioner, certainly has an appreciation for those challenges. I understand that. But I also have a strong sense that sometimes you got to quit cutting bait and start fishing if you're going to fish. And we just have seen a constant string of these extensions and the continual explanation of winter weather. You may have noticed I'm a little skeptical about that requiring a 3-month extension, because you won't lose all 3 months, obviously. In fact, so far this winter you might have lost, I'm guessing, a maximum of a couple weeks due to snow cover and or frozen ground. So that's why I asked the question. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Richard.
Yes, Ms. Carroll. Just obviously this is a state policy. It's a pilot, so we're trying to work our way through all these issues. And does your company have you done these projects in any other states or any other places?
Yes, we have.
Okay. I mean, obviously we're learning. One of the things we maybe did not anticipate when we put these regulations together is the difficulty, the fact that we cannot just push these through the county governments. Did you face that in other states, or is this something that you're finding unique, unfortunately, to Maryland?
Right. I think in concept, the legislation goal was to see these projects go quickly to get the benefits, which is a great aim to have. We don't see these restrictions from acceptance to the program to getting operational in other states. And in fact, in the net metering program, as you know, there isn't that restriction.
Okay. And can you just quantify how much money has the company already put into these 3 projects?
About $100,000 per project.
Okay, so you have put money on the table, and so
Yeah.
at this point, everything that you're facing really is a function of not being able to get the necessary permits from the county governments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I mean, if something were to, I mean, I guess there's been a change, it sounds like, in thinking in Baltimore County at this point. So I don't know if maybe that will, go through to Anne Arundel County. If anything were to change like that, is it possible you could get construction going in 2019, or do you foresee that that's not even in the cards at this point?
Both of those counties have at least 6 months for just general discretionary permits. And Anne Arundel is a different situation with this denial of a concurrent step, adding 3 months to our schedule. So, no, I don't foresee. What happened in Baltimore, we have 2 projects there, was just allowing projects to proceed forward. All the solar projects are still under appeal in Baltimore. So the moratorium bill was withdrawn, but those projects also face high risk because they're all under appeal.
Okay, so this risk. Okay, so at this point, if we look at the staff recommendation of February 7 and 14, again, given the restrictions on construction, and I do have some of the same questions as Commissioner O'Donnell. I mean, my
Sure.
neighborhood, I see a number of housing developments that seem to be not stopped at all by the winter months. So are you erring on the side of caution, or is it part of what the restrictions are that are being put before you by the counties that are the issue of not constructing in winter? Because obviously construction does happen in winter, but it seems in your case that this seems to be a real obstacle.
Yeah, according to this schedule, we wouldn't get our building permits until December. So we would not be able to start, in those October months. It is more expensive to start and stop, and that's the challenge of financiers being willing to start even on November 1.
Got it. I
knowing.
guess what I'm asking, is it absolute that you cannot construct in the winter? I'm just trying to understand this obstacle of winter construction, because that seems to be an issue with some of the commissioners, and I'd like to understand too, because I do see construction on other projects taking place, at least in Prince George's County, in the winter months.
We have done it. I would say the soil doesn't stabilize. You can't plant, so there are larger environmental impacts, and it's up to the financier whether they're willing to take those larger risks.
Okay, so it's additional costs. And are there regulatory issues that you're facing also with, do you have to seek extra permits or other authorizations to construct in the winter? Or, again, so we know there are costs involved, but are there restrictions with permitting?
I would say yes, because when you finish construction, you have to have the state restored and stabilized for inspection in a certain amount of time.
Okay. So really, if we were to go with the staff recommendation of February 7 and 14, you would have to come back, most
That's
likely.
correct.
Okay, so what are there costs involved, or is it difficult to come back to the commission? I mean, what are there? I mean, obviously, it's just one other, bureaucratic step. But tell me what the company has to go through to come back to the commission.
Major decisions on risk and continuing forward with the project.
Okay, plus I guess there's cost of the 17 copies and all those types of things. So, okay. All right, so if we're going to go forward, if that's what the commission decides to do, if we say we're going to stick to February, you will have to come back and have to endure those extra regulatory burdens and the risk costs.
That's right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ms. Carroll, just quickly in response to Commissioner Richard, has the project financing not been entirely lined up at this point, or do you seek additional financing as the timeline progresses? Do you have to go back to your financiers and ask for additional money to finance this project, or have they committed to each of these three projects already?
Financiers are in place but have not funded the project until there's no risk, so de-risked project status, meaning you have all the land under control, you have a path on interconnection, and you have these discretionary permits in hand.
So the $100,000 that has been sunk so far, that has been paid entirely by the developer, not financed?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff. Has staff considered in making or proposing this recommendation that we grant the extension, has there been any consideration or concern regarding the impact the extension would have on the report that the staff is working on concluding?
So when staff deals with these, and as they mentioned, there are a number of them that don't come before you because they're pending legal challenges. We are trying to keep the projects together. And the hope is, obviously, we can't by fiat or by what we put in our comments make this happen, but the hope is that we would get the maximum number of projects completed in time for the report, so we have something to report on, and we don't have very much right now. I mean, we can tell how many megawatts are out there and who's in what service territory and whether they've gotten to interconnection and whether they're completely, they've gotten nothing done due to pending legal challenge. But other than that, we can't really report on what I think would be wanted in such a report, which is how's it all working out? You know, is this, you know, what's the rate? How are people, you know, are these fully signed up? Are people happy with them? Is this a problem for the utilities? You know, what's the completed cost? There are a number of things that we would look at in such a report.
So is this...
So I guess that's a long-winded yes to your question.
Well, thank you. That was going to be my next question. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I'd be interested to hear if any commissioners have a disagreeing position, but I recognize that regulatory certainty is important for these developers, and I do not want this commission to be the government agency that is responsible for any projects not moving forward. Obviously, at this early stage, counties are becoming more comfortable with the permitting process, even though it's resulting in delays of, it appears, up to 1 year. However, at this stage, June 2020 is still a year and a half off. A lot of additional changes could occur with the permitting process at the county level. Hopefully it's sped up, but we have no control over that. The Commission has shown a willingness to grant additional extensions of time for these community solar projects when warranted, and it appears that if permitting delays continue to delay the ability to break ground and develop the projects, I have no doubt that the developer will be quickly before the Commission requesting an additional period of time. So at this point, I do not see good cause to grant an extension beyond the February 7th and 14th dates that staff is recommending. So I would approve the Commission's motion as is. If commissioners have differing views, I would ask they be presented.
Well, I mean, as I was trying to get from the questioning, it sounds like it's pretty certain that they are going to have to come back. And it sounds like by doing, if we don't extend to June 1st, we are just adding to the burden of this company and just the risks associated with financing. I mean, we're adding to just the overall burden of you know, again, having to file again, you know, spend their time. These are private sector companies, so you know, this is they're not subsidized. They're essentially on the dime, their own dime. So I mean, I guess I would appeal to everyone not only to accept the extension, but to say, let's not be part of the problem here. Let's allow this company to, you know, it's already invested a lot of money into these projects. They're delayed by no fault of their own. It's the county, the counties that are causing the issues. So I guess I would just appeal to my fellow commissioners that, you know, let's give them a little more time. They've given a good reason why they would not be able to meet the February. So I don't think it's unreasonable to just give them a few more months and say June 2020. Anyway, that's my feeling.
There's two proposals. I would ask for the other commissioners to present their perspectives.
So,
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I've had some frustration with all these delays, but let nobody think that we don't want these projects to be successful. Obviously, we do. That's why we created the CSEGS pilot in the first place. We want these projects to go forward, but we want them to go forward now, not later, and yet we keep getting all these applications for delays. Some of that is due to local intransigence, for lack of a better word, in this process. That seems to be working itself out, but it may take a while. It's not there yet. I appreciate that as well. but I've heard winter construction. I've heard today, I think for the first time, rainy season, and I've heard soil compaction. I think a lot of those items are masking what's really driving a lot of this, which is the financiers, the financial arrangements of these projects. That's right at the heart of this, I believe. And I can't get around that. We don't say that. A lot of this timing, pushing the timing around this is due to the financiers, the investors. And I just wish we could just say that if that's the real reason. That would give us a fuller understanding of this pilot going forward. I don't disagree with some of the things that Commissioner Richard has said. So we, even though you may be surprised by that, I do think that there's some merit to some of those arguments. So being the one who was pushed for the hard line on not granting the waivers, I'm open to the will of the majority here, but I would like these developers to give a good faith effort to get going now as soon as you get your permits and get it done. As I said earlier, sometimes you got to get out of the meeting room and into the field. You got to quit cutting the bait and you got to put it on the hook and start fishing. So that's kind of my thoughts.
And I would like to associate myself with Commissioner O'Donnell's comments. We've heard a lot about winter weather and muddy conditions. I think we have heard less regarding the impact of financing and the risk that poses, and it might be greater than the risk that construction timelines may be delayed. Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually am supportive of the February 7th deadline, or February deadline. We'll just capture them all at one time, with the understanding that if the company's having additional challenges, that they could return the request to seek additional time if they need it. As you probably could tell from my question to the staff, I am concerned about just exactly what we're going to study as part of the overall community solar program. I mean, there's a lot of interest in increasing the state's RPS goals. This type of project, the community solar project, is designed to help a number of consumers that, for various reasons, are unable to benefit from solar as an overall concept just because of housing or whatever. So I'd like to see these projects move forward. Thankfully, the Baltimore County Council provision was withdrawn last night, so at least that didn't continue to push back some of the projects in the county, Baltimore County. So we know that the General Assembly is very interested in the reports. I don't think we have to send this one to the General Assembly, but I'm sure they're going to want to know what we've concluded. So I think it's important that we keep pushing and keep trying to make sure that these projects are moving forward. If there is reasons why companies are unable to move forward, they're not of their own making, then of course we're willing to, I would at least be willing to give additional time so that the projects can move forward. I'd hope that our processes for getting back in front of us are not too complex, so that it's easy to get here. But that's kind of that's where I would be.
Thank you. Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand and appreciate all the comments here. I don't believe that having to come back, if in fact the company is unable to construct by the February deadline, I don't believe it's an unreasonable burden to write a letter and come back to the commission. It's a small expense, and I think that in order to try to maintain these deadlines and to stay on target, I think it's important that we send that message. And I agree with the message from all of my colleagues that this commission wants to see these projects built, and I think that everything we have said in all of these extensions has indicated that. So I don't think that it would be difficult for those providing financing to understand that we want these projects to be built. There's just no record on which to say that the commission is not interested in seeing these projects go forward. And I think that if the concern is truly financing, then we would need to see some record of that. You know, we have people coming to us before the microphone saying our financiers aren't, won't do that. But I don't have a record of that, and so to me, I think that causes some difficulty. So I would vote to maintain the dates recommended by staff, with the understanding that, of course, if you're unable to construct, or if you're halfway through, come back. The commission will act as quickly as it can to adjust and to provide that. But I don't think it's an unreasonable burden, and I don't feel comfortable that a record has been made that now the argument that financing is the real problem, not so much constructing in the winter, but financing. So to the extent that is the case, then I would suggest that in the future we try to have some sort of record of that. So that would be my position, to maintain in February.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. I believe we have a consensus position on this, and I would just like to explain to the developers, yourself and others, as Commissioner Herman has stated, this commission has a record of providing extensions for good cause, and that we do not have a record before us right now of the hurdles and challenges associated with risks to financing. And perhaps we'll see that in future applications. With that, is there a motion on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and then I would just note that I concur with everything that's been said, I'm glad that we got out that this commission has been supportive of these extensions, so I'm satisfied with proceeding with the motion as staff recommended. Therefore, for item number 9, I move we grant an extension of the operation deadline to February 7, 2020 for the Clean Choice Energy Community LLC Bathian Solar Project, and to February 14th, 2020 for Clean Choice Energy Community LLC's Checker Spot Solar and Patuxent Solar projects consistent with COMAR 20.62.03.04C, contingent upon Clean Choice's payment to Baltimore Gas and Electric of the amount required under COMAR 20.62.03.04C1 to retain each project's place in the BGE's queue.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. Seeing no additional business before the commission this morning, this meeting is adjourned.